Welcome to CosmoFactory, a podcast by Cosmoprof Worldwide Bologna, where we explore the entire cosmetics, personal care, and fragrance industry supply chain. I'm your host, Deanna Utrusky, and here at CosmoFactory, we look beyond the trends to discover the ideas, initiatives, and innovations that are truly advancing beauty. Let's get started. This episode is about bacteriophages. It's about an intriguing subsection of microbiome skincare. It's about technology transfer from pharma to beauty and back again. And it's about growing an innovative biotech business from the ground up. Today, on the CosmoFactory podcast, my guest is Milan Bunata, Business Director of FagoFarma. Welcome.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you so much for joining us. We're excited to hear from you today.
I'm excited as well to be here and to be the part of your wonderful podcast about the beauty and innovation in that.
Thank you so much. So I want to start our conversation off with the very basics. Will you just remind us what phage technology is?
Well, generally said, bacteriophages are microorganisms, much smaller than bacteria. In fact, they are very similar to viruses, but they are not viruses at all. And the specific of these microorganisms is that they are bacteria killers. So they are something like parasites to bacteria. They are looking or seeking for their proper host bacteria, and they are killing them in the way that they are laying their DNA inside the bacterial cells. And inside the cell, the DNA multiply, create a new generation of bacteriophages. And then these bacteriophages just shred the bacteria away, and a new generation of bacteriophages is born and is going to the world to seek for new bacteria. The great thing about them is that they are very specific. So that means that they are seeking only for their host bacterial strain, not only species, but also the strain. So if you have, for example, bacteriophage that is targeting, for example, Staphylococcus aureus, which is a very famous pathogen. So you can have a bacteriophage that is targeting just some species of Staphylococcus aureus, and some other, it remains intact. So that means that you can use them for very selective killing or selective destruction of bacteria.
Yeah, no, excellent. Thank you for that. Yeah, and so I have to be honest, I've observed a bit of reluctance to adopting phage technology over the years in cosmetics and skincare especially, but we are seeing it in both the ingredient sector as well as the consumer brand space. So I want to share some examples just for context, because it's certainly an important emerging technology now. Listeners who follow my work beyond the podcast will have read about a biopharmaceutical company called Lysando, which is based in Germany. And that company specializes in the development of antimicrobial proteins. So proteins that are selectively eliminating bacteria. They've been doing this work for, 15, 16 plus years. And I think they have like a remarkable number of patents and have developed hundreds of prototypes based on their research. There's also a US-based company called Dermagen that makes an ingredient called Dermatide Smooth. They use what's called phage display technology, meaning that a protein or peptide, and I believe it's a peptide in this case, is actually fused to the protein envelope of the bacteriophage, and thereby changing the way that it's displayed or understood by its specific bacteria. As you said, they're each seeking one particular bacteria, so it will show up differently to that. In the brand space, there's a brand from a Russia-based company. The company, I think, is Micromere Bio, and their consumer product is called Micromere Gel. This is rather distinctive in that they list 81 bacteriophages on their ingredient list. So that is a bit overwhelming to me, but I assume they're addressing a lot of concerns. I don't know much about the brand, as you can maybe tell by my remarks, but they're definitely in this space. There's a consumer eczema care brand called Gladskin, which is owned by a Dutch biotech company called Micrios Group. And back in 2020, L'Oreal signed a licensing deal to use their endolysin protein I try to do my desk research in advance of each podcast, but I can't actually confirm the length of that licensing agreement. So I don't know if they're still working together, but certainly every beauty maker is doing their research in microbiome skincare for sure. A US-based brand that's received some attention is Phyla. They've secured significant investment funding. In fact, it was just about 1 year ago now, probably as you're listening to the podcast, that Shiseido invested in that brand. Phyla is focused mostly on acne with their Bacteriophage platform right now. But they're definitely at work on addressing what we would call chronic disease with this technology as well. And for our listeners, especially interested in microbiome beauty, I want to mention that Marie Drago, the founder of Galanée Microbiome Skincare, was my guest here on the CosmoFactory podcast in episode 7. And somewhat coincidentally, Shiseido actually acquired that brand in 2022. So you may want to listen to that episode after this one, of course. And while we're thinking about consumer brands, I'll turn back to you, Milan. FagoFarma does have consumer skincare product on the market in the Czech Republic, where your company is based. Will you tell us about the FagoCare Gel?
Yes, certainly. So FagoCare, as you mentioned, Diana, it's a gel that contains living bacteriophages. These bacteriophages are targeting two bacterial species that are believed to be responsible for acne and other dermal infections.
Mhm.
So it's a Staphylococcus aureus, which is one of the most common pathogen generally. And the second one is Cutibacterium acne. Formerly, it was named Propionibacterium acne, but scientists decided for some reason to change the name. They are doing it at time to time because they like it more. And the result is that we need to change everything in the regulatory papers.
Yes.
So yeah, FagoCare is a gel which was developed in collaboration with our partner cosmetic company to be a well accepted gel for the skin, and it contains these living bacteriophages against these two bacterial species. And the main target or the main aim why we developed is to bring bacteriophages close to the people and to learn people that they can use bacteriophages, that the bacteriophages can be used for healthcare in some
Mhm.
way.
Mhm.
Because at the moment, the biggest content or the biggest focus on bacteriophages is how to bring them into the human medicine, into the clinical practice. But this is a long-term process, very costly, not only from the financial point of view, but also from the time point of view. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of money to bring something new into the medical application. So we decided that we can make a softer option, which would be a cosmetic product
Mhm.
that we can bring close to the people, and people can find that look, microbiology is not just a weird science of weird people, but there are some real products, some hard products that you can use, and it can help you to improve your skin, your feeling, and whatever.
Mhm.
So that was the main story behind the FagoCare, why we develop it. So at the moment, as you mentioned, Diana, exactly. So it's launched in the Czech and Slovak market
Okay.
because we are a company based in the Czech Republic, and Slovakia is a neighborhood. So we launched it here, and we are now looking for the partners and for the ways how to launch it across the European Union and then maybe even far away.
Sure, sure. And what you're describing makes very good sense for multiple reasons, right? We often see companies use the cosmetic space for brand awareness or product, technology awareness, for consumer education, and even thinking especially about, microbiome skincare as this relates to. I think there was a lot of consumer education that happened in terms of the gut microbiome that really helped consumer adoption in terms of microbiome skincare in general, and just starting to familiarize everyone with the human microbiome and the potential we have there. So I think this approach in cosmetics, it makes very good sense, and there'll be a lot of listeners who are developing technologies with wider applications that are definitely doing similar work. I'm wondering if there might be other skin issues that phage technology could be used to address. Are you looking at the potential here in terms of like eczema, rosacea, other similar issues, or because you mentioned acne, I believe?
Yes. You are right. More or less, bacteriophages can help. And now I'm speaking not only from the cosmetic point of view, but also from the medical point of view.
Okay.
Bacteriophages can help wherever you have problems with bacteria. And speaking these times, the biggest issue that we are facing regarding the bacterial infections is the antibiotic resistance.
Mhm.
So one of the reasons why bacteriophages, and you mentioned several companies that are working also with endolysins, which is very similar topic. One of the reasons why this is so actual at the moment is that we have an increasing problem with antibiotic resistance. That simply the bacterial infections do not respond to antibiotic treatment. It's absolutely normal phenomena, by the way,
Yeah.
because if you have any kind of microorganism and you put it into the influence of something that is killing this microorganism, in few generations, this microorganism evolve resistance. So it's
Yeah.
absolutely normal phenomena. When you use antibiotics, unfortunately, the resistance toward the antibiotics occurs sooner or later. Now we have something completely new. We have bacteriophages, we have lysins. That is something that is new for the bacteria, but as well, it's old for the bacteria, because what we are doing when we are using bacteriophages is that we are using natural enemies of the bacteria. We are not evolving something new. We are not developing new chemicals. We are simply taking something that is in the nature already, that has been in the environment of bacteria for all the time, and we are using their natural enemies to eliminate the bacteria.
Yeah. So
So
let me just
it
make sure I
means
understand correctly. Instead of synthesizing an ingredient, you're actually just isolating it from the natural environment.
yes, absolutely true. Absolutely true. Because as soon as you have bacterial culture, sooner or later the bacteriophages occurs in that culture. So you can just isolate them, multiply them, and this higher amount of bacteriophages, you put them back to the bacteria, and then you have some kind of a battle. And usually the bacteriophages won. The advantage is that as the bacteriophages are living organisms as well as bacteria are, it means that okay, bacteria can evolve resistance, but the bacteriophages are evolving as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that simply if some bacteriophage stop working, you can just isolate a new one and you can use the new one toward which one the bacteria is not resistant. Yeah, so that's one of the biggest advantage of bacteriophages, that simply you still have a new ones, naturally occurring new ones that you can use against the bacteria. That's
Yeah.
the first. And the second huge advantage of bacteriophages is that, as I told at the beginning, that they are targeting just their host's bacterial strains.
Right.
They do not do anything else. So simply said, if you apply them to the infection, for example, in the healthcare, if they find the infection, they will fight with the infection. If they do not find the infection, they do nothing, and after some time they disintegrate, or how to
Sure.
say properly. So regarding these factors, you can use bacteriophages more or less everywhere where you have problems with the bacterial infections. If you
Mm-hmm.
find the bacteriophages towards the bacteria that are causing the infections, you can use them, and you can try to use them to eliminate the infection. So yes, we can speak about Rossella. We can speak, for example, even about some diseases like infected wounds, diabetic foot, uh, some uh, some dermatitis caused by bacteria, and so on and so on. But regarding the application, the cosmetics, where we are targeting now with FagoCare,
Yeah.
it's much more about keeping the microbiome, skin microbiome balanced. So not to
Yes.
have any overgrowth of the bacteria and so on.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. And it's clear that there's a much larger picture here than the one skincare product that you're doing quite a lot in the production of biotech products for skincare and pharma as well. But I'm hoping you can give us a little bit of backstory here. FagoFarma is relatively new. Can you tell us what inspired this company's origin? Where did it come from?
Well, yes, you are right that FagoFarma was established in, let's say, 2013, 2014. And the idea behind was that in the former Czechoslovakia in the 70s, there was a bacteriophage treatment program. There was a registered drug product based on bacteriophages that was widely used in the former Czechoslovakia in the hospitals,
Mhm.
and it was very well accepted. It has a good properties, or it had a good properties, and the physicians, they like it. But unfortunately, after the political changes in the 90s and after also implementation of the European legislation, this product disappeared from the market because simply
Okay.
it can't fulfill the requirements of the European Union and of the current pharmaceutical legislation.
Sure.
But the tradition was here, and the people working on that, they were here as well. So they put together the knowledge and the experience, and let's say seeing the potential in that because of the antibiotic resistance, they decided like, okay, well, let's go try it because it's nothing new in fact, because
No.
bacteriophages, and it's something that is here for even more than even longer time than antibiotics.
Right.
So they decided, let's take this technology that was here, that was used, and let's try to modify it in the way so it can be accepted by the pharmaceutical legislation and cosmetic legislation and veterinary legislation and so on. And let's try to use it, at least in the cases where the antibiotics fail.
Yeah.
And it was successful in a way.
Yeah.
We are still at the very beginning. We are a small company doing much more research and development than the manufacturing itself. But the main target that we have is that we would like to bring bacteriophages into the clinical practice and into the cosmetic practice and into the veterinary practice. To use it, we do not want to replace antibiotics, but we would like to use it where the antibiotics do not work,
Right.
and where antibiotics are not necessary.
Sure.
So that's the biggest point that we have in our heads at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's also interesting. Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned earlier that I've noticed there has been some reluctance to adopt phage technology in skincare and beyond. And as you pointed out, I mean, it's technology that we have had access to for well longer than our lifetimes. But I'm hoping you can maybe speak to some of the common concerns that scientists or even corporate leaders might have here. How can we put people's mind at ease about phage technology?
Well, that's a good question. That's a really good question. I would say this. I would say it this way. As I said, bacteriophages were here for forever because where you have bacteria, you have bacteriophages. They have been discovered, or they were discovered at the end of the 19th century, much more or less coincidentally, that there is something that is killing bacteria in the water, and it was described as a bacteriophage. And it was more or less used for treating the bacterial infections until the time where Fleming invented penicillin. So he brought antibiotics into the world, and it was a miracle, by the way, because suddenly you had a drug that you could have used to treat people from infections from which they died. Millions of people died for the infections. It's something that can be treated pretty easily by penicillin.
Sure.
And at that time, bacteriophages stopped to be interesting for the people because penicillin was pretty easy to be manufactured. It was pretty easy to be spread out to millions of people and so on.
Yeah. I'm wondering too if infection and disease at the time was harder to sort of diagnose with the specificity that bacteriophages would have been able to address. I'm just thinking out loud there.
That's a good thought. Honestly speaking, I think that microbiology at the time was really a newborn baby with very limited possibilities and with very limited technologies and equipment. So it was, it was much more guessing in some time, because even a simple microscope was something that was a kind of a miracle. So if you compare the possibilities, the technological possibilities that we have right now, and then the scientists had 100 years ago, it's a completely different world, or even completely different galaxy.
Yeah. It made very good sense to go with the penicillin.
Yeah. It was much easier because simply what we have now. We have now DNA analysis. So when we have a bacteriophage or even a bacteria, we can scan all the genome. We can look to the genome. We can look to the properties of the strain. We can isolate them. We can observe them not only using the optical microscope, but also the electronic microscope. We can do more or less whatever you want to analyze what we have on the petri dish. But when you look 100 years ago, what they had, more or less nothing. Just a magnificent glass, or slightly better magnificent glass, and that was also, they were just doing it like okay or not okay, and that was all. But I think that's the biggest reason why this microbiological technologies and this microbiological products, or how to say it, has a huge renaissance this time, because suddenly we have a technology that allow us to use it properly. Penicillin was pretty easy in the 20s or 30s when it was invented, simply because it was nothing complicated to produce, to pack, to distribute, to give it to the people. But bacteriophages and proteins and lysins, it was something, it was on the edge of the science and
Right. And we
magic
can
for the
see
people
now
of time.
with more scientific
So that's
specificity
so
and
that's
confidence. I'm sorry, go ahead.
no. Yeah, you are completely right that this allows us nowadays allows us to not only to use it but also to develop it
Yes.
to predict behavior, for example. So we do not at the time we do not need to test, for example, the bacteriophage toward bacteria, but regarding the properties from the DNA analysis, we can predict whether the phage will work to the bacteria and vice versa. So that's a kind of a miracle
Yeah,
that we
no,
have
it's
in the
very
science at the
exciting.
moment.
That's super cool. Thank you for sharing all of that. You know, I'm always hoping that the conversations we have here on the podcast are a source of information, maybe also a little inspiration for the CosmoFactory community of listeners. So, with that in mind, before we wrap up, I would love to hear a bit about the stage of business that FagoFarma is in. You mentioned earlier, you know, your sort of aspirations to grow, but I'm wondering, like, you have a company at this stage. How do you decide what partnerships are right as you expand your business? Maybe there are, you know, other companies listening, right, at a similar stage and are trying to make these decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Does it make sense to grow, you know, FagoCare as a product line and look for like international retail distribution? Does it make sense for you to partner with other brands and actually manufacture skincare? Does it make sense for you to license this technology out and maybe partner with legacy cosmetic ingredient makers and let them handle it? How do you make this decision? What's next?
Well, uh, thank you so much for this question, Diana. Maybe in the answer I will maybe shot myself in my leg a little bit at the moment, but you know, I have to say that FagoFarma is a really small company. We are not any huge corporate or something like that. We are a company fully based in Prague, in the Czech Republic, with few laboratory enthusiastic people. So we are just a small group of enthusiastic people who like to bring something into the real world. So we are mainly oriented on services and on the production itself. We have labs, we know how to work in them, we know what to produce, we know what to develop and how to make it working. We are not focusing on product sales itself. Like we will never, well, never, not in the close future. We will not have a distributor network, our own one. So what we are doing at the moment is that we have a great expertise in something that is new and that can be used in different fields, like in cosmetics, in beauty, or in medical. We know how to make it into this field. We are not just the scientists who know how to do it technically, but we also know what does it mean to turn the result of the research and development into the product that you can simply sell to the market. And we would be happy to have a partner or partners that will help us to go further, to go with the sales, to take it and to say, okay, you will manufacture it for us, and we will be the one will be responsible for spreading it all across the globe and bring it to the billions of people so they can be happy and they will not need antibiotics
Yeah.
anymore, and so on, so on, and we will save the world. So regarding that, as I said, we are not focused on the sales. We are not focused on earning money on the packaging of the product, but we are focused on development, on scale up, on transfer from development to the manufacturing and to the practice. And we are looking for the potential partner or partners who would help, who would continue on that. So will help with the introduction of this to the
Right, right. Oh,
to the public
interesting. No, thank you
people.
for sharing that. And your remarks there reminded me of something you told me in an earlier conversation that we had. And I won't be able to repeat it, so I'm hoping you I'm hoping what I say will remind you of what it is. But there's something particular about the technology you've developed within, I think you said within the European Union that your company is somehow distinctive for its manufacturing processes or for the the sort of bacteriophages that you're working with?
Well, you mean
Yeah, I
from the
believe
regulatory
so.
point of view, or yeah. There is a situation in the European Union at the moment that EMA, which is the European Medical Agency, is preparing a new monography
Okay.
about bacteriophages. So it will be a document describing if you would like to use bacteriophages in drug production, in the medical production, how to do it properly. Because roughly said, if you are producing drugs in general, you have two possibilities what you can do. First is that you can simply follow the huge document that is called Pharmacopoeia, which is a regulatory document describing how to produce, what to control, what you need to check, what you need to take care of, and so on, so on. The second possibility is that you bring something new, but then you need to validate everything, validate the production, the analytical methods, and you need to generate tons and tons of data supporting that what you are doing the right way. And so that was the situation of bacteriophages till these times, because simply they were not described. So we needed to develop the methods and production and everything by ourselves. There were some, let's say, common sense, common applications, but in general, we needed to prove everything. At the moment, EMA is preparing this monography, which means that we will have a unified document valid for all the European Union describing if you would like to make bacteriophages as a medical product for the clinical use, you will follow this monography and it will be accepted by all the authorities that it is done in the right way, which will be a huge step forward for all this field, because it's a framework that will help manufacturers how to manufacture and produce these. It will help the clinicians how to apply it to the patients. It will help the regulatory bodies how to approve it and how to check and approve these products for the application. And also, it's a good guideline for the investors that will potentially give the money into this field that, okay, here is a clear regulatory framework under which it's pretty clear how to bring these products to the market. So this document, this simple document, is something that I believe can move the phage, generally the phage application, not only the phage therapy, but in general the phage application, by a huge leap
No, it
forward.
sounds like more than a benchmark for sure. Very useful. Yes. Well, Milan, I have to thank you for speaking with me on such a specialized topic. It was very nice to have you as a guest on the CosmoFactory podcast. Thank you.
Thank you so much for invitation.
Thank you so much for listening. If you find the CosmoFactory podcast useful, please take a moment to leave us a 5-star review and share your thoughts so even more cosmetic industry professionals can discover the CosmoFactory. I'm Deanna Utrusky. Please join me again next Tuesday for a new episode of the CosmoFactory podcast.